Today I want to talk to you about my journey with PCOS, which is Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome. How long have I had PCOS? According to my fertility specialist, PCOS develops when a girl is about the age of 6 or 7. So before you even go through puberty, you're already set up to have it. There was nothing that I could have done to prevent it. I unfortunately didn't find out that I had PCOS until November of last year. So I've been living with this for a long time. Not that it's, been detrimental to my life, but it just would have been good to know a lot sooner. Unfortunately, diagnosing PCOS is actually really not that easy because there are so many different factors and not everybody has the same symptoms. So, for example, a girl could be, one of her factors could be being overweight, another girl is skinny, and it doesn't affect the same type of person. I hope that I'm saying that right. So I want to talk to you about our journey with trying to conceive our first child. Like I said in my previous video, my husband and I got married in September of 2015. We decided in April of 2016 we would start trying for a family. So we did that for 6 months. And then by October of 2016, I decided something's not quite right. It hasn't been a year yet like they recommend, but I just feel like there is something that's not quite right and maybe I could use some help. I switched OBGYNs around October of 2016 and I felt like that doctor was really understanding about what I was going through. He was actually recommended to me by a friend who went to him and has 2 children now, so I figured that was a pretty good recommendation. So when I went to him, it's all a little fuzzy now, but I do remember having an exam, a lot of blood work done on different days of my cycle, and I had an ultrasound. And at the ultrasound, when the technician was looking at my ovaries, I do remember the ultrasound technician stopping and making notes on my ultrasound that I had, what did she say? I think she just wrote polycystic ovaries or possible PCOS, but she wouldn't discuss any of that with me at the time. That was my first inkling that maybe I did have PCOS, but she wasn't gonna tell me that I did. And by the way, we have a train that goes by our house, if you're wondering what that noise was. After all of the blood work at my regular OBGYN, we were referred to a specialist here in Charlotte, and I had an initial meeting with them. They took into account all the blood work that had already been done by my OBGYN, but I still had to do more with them because they wanted to do, I guess, different tests. So I had to go in several times on different days of my cycle, assuming that I knew when that was because my cycles were always irregular. I also had what's called an HSG Xray, which I'll tell you was zero fun for me. So I had to go in on a certain day of my cycle to do this HSG Xray. And the HSG, once you're on the table, and they've got like this big bright light above you, because they're going to be taking an X-ray from above. You've got your legs in the stirrups and everything. They insert a catheter into your cervix, which feels kind of like a pap smear, but a little bit more pressure because not only are they like cranking that thing up, but they're also putting this really thin catheter in, and at the end of the catheter is a balloon. So they dilate this balloon into your uterus, which that itself is no fun. But then they take this dye and they move it through, and the objective is they want to see if you have a spill out. So if your fallopian tubes are blocked at any point, then the dye will not flow out. And they're taking X-ray pictures the whole time, so they can kind of see it if it's spilling out on each side. If you don't have any problems with blockages, then I guess theoretically you're not really supposed to experience anything other than some pressure, because the the dye is just going to spill out the ends and then everything's fine. But for me, I just had a feeling that I was going to have a problem and it was not going to be comfortable. It was, I don't want to scare you, but if you have a blockage in your fallopian tubes, the HSG Xray is very painful. I kind of felt like I was getting lightheaded, and it was one of the most painful experiences of my life. Years ago, I had an IUD put in, which is the intrauterine device for birth control. And the doctor at the time was saying, oh, you should feel nothing more than light cramping. It was the worst pain ever. I felt like I must have been in labor, even though I've never been in labor. So back to the HSG Xray, if you have a blockage, just be prepared that it's going to be quite painful. I know this is different than someone who doesn't have a blockage because a friend of mine also had it done and she said it was nothing. But then again, like I said, for me, that X-ray was awful. So just be prepared. And they also say, I think you can take like some ibuprofen or something beforehand. I definitely felt like I needed something stronger. Just keep in mind that it might be very painful. If you have any questions about the HSG Xray, if you've, want to talk about it, you've gone for it before, put a comment down in the comments section and I will be happy to reply to that. So after I had all of the blood work done at the fertility doctor's office, I had the HSG Xray. I went in for genetic testing just for me, not my husband. And that was just blood tests, although they did take, I think, 20 vials of blood that day, so it was a lot. My husband had to do a semen analysis, so he had to go in on his day off and make a deposit at the fertility clinic and have that examined. So all of this testing took about 3 weeks because I had to be on certain days of my cycle, and then my husband had to go in, and the doctor wanted to meet with both of us once all of that was complete. So we went in the first week of November 2016, and the doctor told me that I have PCOS. He said mild PCOS, and PCOS is Polycystic Ovary Syndrome, which means that each month my ovaries would produce a bunch of follicles, but none of them would actually mature. And this was due to a hormonal problem where my brain was not telling my ovaries to mature and release an egg. Therefore, I was not ovulating at all. My levels were actually high enough a couple times during the month that when I would take these ovulation predictor kit tests, it looked like I was ovulating. He actually told us to just throw those tests away because they weren't going to do me any good. I just want to back up a little bit and give you guys an idea of how I kind of knew that I had PCOS before I was officially diagnosed. There are several symptoms, and you need a few of those to actually be classified as having PCOS. For me, I had irregular periods since puberty, so that was a big sign for me. I've always been slightly overweight, or when I say always, I mean since before puberty. I have struggled with depression and anxiety, and I haven't had a lot like some people can. I did test high for testosterone a couple of years ago. I was getting really bad hot flashes, and I also had a few like stray facial hairs that were growing like here and just like a couple here and there. Not too bad. There are some women who can get like beard-like hairs around here and on their chest. And he told us that we had two options. We could do IVF, in vitro fertilization, which the thought of that almost made me cry in the office because it's almost like around $20,000 per cycle. Not only that, it's a very long cycle. It takes a few months to like get your body ready for it, and it's just emotionally not something that I thought that I was ready for. So our other option was IUI, intrauterine insemination. That's where you come in on a certain day of your cycle and they basically just make what you and your husband would do naturally happen there in the office, giving the sperm a much bigger boost to be able to get closer to the egg. So I thought, okay, well, that's what we'll try then. In addition, going back to the HSG Xray that I had, I did kind of have a blockage. I needed a surgery called fimbrioplasty. I needed the fimbrioplasty surgery before we could do the IUI because I had a much greater chance of having an ectopic pregnancy if I didn't do the surgery first. So all this was very overwhelming. Ultimately, we decided to do the fimbrioplasty surgery with the IUI. That was going to be our first step. We already decided that we would try IUI for a couple times before moving on to IVF just because of the expense of IVF. You might be wondering, is there anything that you can do for PCOS to, I guess, get rid of it, or do you take any medicine for it? The answer is no, I don't take any medicine for it. It's, I'm assuming, something that I will always have. One thing that does help with the symptoms is being in control of your weight and also being on birth control. And birth control for PCOS is a catch-22 because it does help minimize the symptoms of PCOS, but if you want to get pregnant, obviously you can't be on birth control. So what you can do, and what I ended up doing, was going on birth control for a certain period of time. For me, 6 weeks to 2 months. It helped to thin the lining of my uterus and reduce the symptoms of PCOS. If you have any comments or questions, please write them down below. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel.